This is Julia James Davis, and welcome to The War on Beauty. What if I told you we should live in a patriarchy? Not the kind that's portrayed in internet memes or by alpha male influencers, but the kind of patriarchy that reflects the natural order of things, that provides for the future, and the fact that I think women secretly deep down want it too. A patriarchy that cares for the next generation, the way that our society has functioned for thousands of years up until this very point. And we can see that as we've moved away from patriarchy, everything has descended into pure chaos. Since 1960, the percentage of children living in fatherless homes has tripled, with over 18.4 million children living without a biological step or adoptive father in the home. It's really time to consider what we've lost and how we've benefited from moving away from patriarchy to whatever it is we're living in now. But let's define our terms. The classical view of patriarchy was a system where men and fathers and leaders were responsible for providing, protecting, and guiding the family and society. The goal was never domination or oppression, but ordering society in a way that nurtured long-term stability and the well-being of future generations, a concept that is so foreign to us now, caring about the future long after you're gone. And now, since we've shifted so hard away from that, we have a lot of studies with statistics about how it's negatively impacted society moving away from patriarchy. For example, studies consistently show that children in father-present homes are 70 to 80% less likely to go to prison and are twice as likely to graduate from college, while on the other hand, 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. That is 5 times the average suicide rate. So where we're at now is we have these two extremes. Either on the one end, it's the modern interpretation of the patriarchy as bad and oppressive and backwards and harmful to women as framed by the feminists. But then you have the complete other end of the spectrum, which is the red pill masculinity influencers that have also hijacked the conversation, distorting patriarchy into something shallow about alpha male dominance. But really, the patriarchy is about service. It's about service to your family, your country, your future, and your family line. It's about responsibility. When the patriarchy was running things, it wasn't a man's world for the sake of it being a man's world. It was a world where men were given the burden of leadership and the responsibility to protect and nurture their families and their wives, and ultimately all of society. And all of this, I think, is a perennial desire even for women. Because think about like the enduring appeal of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. And there's a lot of examples that I could choose from. But Pride and Prejudice has remained one of the most beloved novels for over 200 years, with so many film adaptations drawing millions of viewers, plus it's even being relaunched in theaters this year. It's just so popular. And also too, romance novels, typically which feature strong masculine figures and traditional gender dynamics, these generate 1.08 billion sales annually, with 82% of the readers being women. So the enduring success of Pride and Prejudice and also these romance novels show that women are really drawn to narratives celebrating a traditional patriarchal structure. These stories romanticize strong, honorable men like Mr. Darcy, who really embody the masculine virtues of protection, provision, and principled and honorable leadership. Why? Because these stories tap into a deep and often very hidden, now hidden, longing for order and security through a patriarchal male figure. Women at their core really crave a system where the chaos of modern life isn't ruling their every decision. They crave stability and they want a protector, not just a partner, unlike the feminist movement has sold them. And the whole paradox of feminism now is really that it's ironically only benefited men, particularly in how it's redefined relationships and gender dynamics. Since the sexual revolution in the 1970s, marriage rates have plummeted 60%. All the while, hookup culture has proliferated. For example, 70% of college students report participating in casual sexual encounters. And also, on the note of college, 63.6% of all student loan debt belongs to women. And the average student loan debt for women in the US is $31,700. So while women are sold this idea of feminism, of being encouraged to be independent and sexually liberated and career focused, it just hasn't benefited us at all. Like, what are we getting out of this? Because studies show that women's overall happiness has significantly declined since the 1970s, despite increased opportunities and independence. And even beyond that, it's the total breakdown of family structures that have really devalued commitment and therefore marriage and therefore increased divorce rates. But all of this has taken such a toll on society as a whole in the long run. But circling back to kind of the effects of all of this on women's happiness levels, because I think the stats on this are super interesting and really paint the whole picture. According to a Gallup poll, about half of working women reported feeling stressed a lot of the time, compared to just 4 in 10 men. Plus, 17% of women overall report having to address personal or family responsibilities at work daily or several times a day, compared to just 11% of men overall. Feminism today, in so many ways, leads women away from the support that they truly need and desire, the structure of a family with a strong male figure to protect and guide them. And again, true patriarchy is not about dominance, it's about responsibility for the future. Because again, communities with a strong father presence show 35% less crime rates, 40% higher rates of academic achievement, and significantly lower rates of teen pregnancy. So just look at the rise of fatherless homes and the decline of the nuclear family and how society has fragmented as a result. And what happens when patriarchy is abandoned. So considering all of this, I truly believe, because the stats show it and we can just look around and see what's happened, I believe that patriarchy is the solution to all of our problems. That would fix everything. And I'm going to prove that in a further and more important way, which is that the ultimate patriarch of our world is God. And so the breakdown of patriarchal systems has been a war against the very concept of God as the Father, the divine protector and the source of all order and harmony. All of this can be measured in a very tangible way. Religious participation has declined 20% in the last 2 decades, which is also correlated to a massive rise in mental health issues. Now, an estimated 21.3% of US adults have experienced mental illness. And also, feminism in and of itself, as a movement in its rejection of patriarchy, often also rejects God and embraces a godless worldview where everything is really reduced to individualism. And the patriarchy, really, too, at the core of it, isn't just about men. It's about reflecting the divine order established at creation, with Adam as the leader of the family, the leader of Eve, and also too, like priests, for example, we call them father. All of this is the natural order of how things should be. So really, again, the war on patriarchy is ultimately the war on God, because if God is the ultimate father, then any effort to dismantle a patriarchy is an effort to erase this divine order. And as we've moved away from patriarchy, so too have we become less religious. According to a recent study, 80% of everybody at church on Sunday morning grew up in a home with a continuously married biological set of parents. And that trend continues across all age groups, from the oldest of Gen Zs to the youngest of boomers. Also, according to Oxford University, who published a 40-year longitudinal study that followed 350 families with over 3,000 adults, they found that disproportionately an adult's description of his or her relationship with their father, whether it was warm and close, was the biggest predictor of whether or not they practiced faith as an adult. But also, too, the outcomes of those who are religious are much better than those who are not. More than 1/3 of actively religious US adults, 36%, describe themselves as very happy, compared to just 1/4 of both inactive and unaffiliated Americans. And they also had significantly lower rates of substance abuse. Individuals who attended services at least once per week had a lower risk of all-cause mortality by 26%, had a lower risk of heavy drinking by 34%, and a lower risk of smoking by 29%. Service attendance was also inversely associated with the number of psychological distress outcomes. For example, depression, anxiety, hopelessness, and loneliness, and was positively associated with psychological well-being outcome. So you can start to see, if you return patriarchy, which really starts with returning to traditional family roles, one mom, one dad, married, together, a dad who's working and providing, it correlates to more religiousness, which then correlates to less mental illness, less substance abuse, less crime, less imprisonment. It has such an incalculable ripple effect of positivity for so many reasons. So we need to restore and rebuild the patriarchy, not to dominate, but to protect our whole society, to provide structure, because that then carries out to the rest of the world. The patriarchy is not about power or dominance, as we've been told by the feminists or even the red pill influencers. It's about protection, and it's about reestablishing what was always meant to be, which was order, care, and love for your immediate family, but ultimately for the future. And do you think, should we return to patriarchy? I know this is a controversial subject, but I would love to know your thoughts on it. And again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.